workshop. So if you are interested in referring back to anything that we go over today, we will be sure to share that out. But welcome everyone to Don't Wait to Update Resumes and Cover Letters Made Easier. Today we're going to be exploring ways to stay on top of application materials to avoid undue stress later on. We know resumes and cover letters can feel daunting, and it's really easy to avoid them until you need them for a specific application. But now is really the perfect time to prepare those materials before you need them. So dust off your previous resumes or start working on a brand new one, and hopefully you'll learn a few tips from us today. My name is Amanda Kennedy. I am the Associate Director of Work Plus within University College. I'm excited to co-lead today's workshop with my colleague from Career Services, Carly, who I will let introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carly Moxley. I'm an associate director with Career Services, working on the career readiness team. So, doing a bunch of what we're going to talk about today, helping students be continually prepared along their career journey. So, really excited to be here. So, as Amanda mentioned, this is the perfect time to really start assessing your needs before you're in knee deep on internship applications, or it's nearing the end of the semester and you're getting ready to actually knock out those applications. So today we're really going to start with going beyond the basics of application materials. And so what does it mean when we say application materials, and how do you continue to expand on what you already have and really tell the story of your experiences? We're going to introduce, maybe if you've never heard of it, we're going to introduce a topic called living resumes, and really what that is, how to build that out, how you can benefit from having one of those, and how that would apply to your future job search. We also are going to talk about cover letters, which is always like a hot button topic. I feel like people either love them or they hate them. But I'm sure you've all written a cover letter because you are in student employee positions. And so you have hopefully mastered the art of cover letters. But we're going to take just a little spin on that and really emphasize how you can utilize cover letters to really tell your story. And then that last bullet, speaking to your strengths, that is what will be woven throughout your resumes, your cover letters, your interviews throughout the entire time, is because you're going to be really confident in knowing your strengths, knowing your areas of growth, and knowing how to talk about it, which can be really challenging. Before we jump into that content, I just want to start by asking you all a question. So feel free to respond in the chat or unmute if you feel comfortable sharing. But I know that we're pretty fresh, maybe into the semester. But so far, what is one thing that you've done this semester that you're really proud of? Drop your answers in the chat or unmute if you're comfortable and brave to share. We'll give a second, see if anybody shares. What's something that you're proud of that you've done this semester? Keeping good grades so far. I love that, Kyle. Schedule's pretty full, but I'm proud that I'm able to keep up with it. That's awesome. Good job, Giselle. Started my capstone, Charlotte. Hello, that's awesome. All right, so as you all continue to either think about keeping my goal of applying to one or two internships or co-ops a day, look at you. That's awesome. So as you all continue to add them in the chat, we'll give you all of the like emoji and reactions that you deserve, but mull over the idea, are these accomplishments that you've just done this semester, are they on your resume? Are there things that you can articulate onto your resume? Have you looked at your resume since you applied for your working learner position? Or maybe Brianna's probably looking at resumes every day as they're applying for those internships. But if you're not in that process, you may not look at your resume until you really need it. And so I wanted to just start with acknowledging all the great things that you're doing And things that may seem everyday, mundane even, are actually really wonderful and pieces that you can add to your story. So we're going to start now that we're kind of in that mindset of thinking about accomplishments and not selling ourselves short. We're going to start by talking a little bit about what we mean today when we're talking about application materials and how we can really think beyond those basics. So when we're thinking about an application, so maybe you're applying for a scholarship, for those co-ops or those internships, student employment positions. Maybe you're applying for, you're gearing up to graduate and you're going to start applying for full-time positions. There's a lot of different application materials, but we're going to just hit on some of those key elements. So a resume or a CV. So you all are, I'm sure, familiar with this, so we won't hit this one too hard. This is where you're going to highlight your education, your different experiences, those various skills and qualifications. And we'll run through that a little bit of just ways you can strengthen that and continue to think beyond those basics. Your cover letter is where you get to tell your story. And so, like I mentioned, some people really don't like doing that. Some people that don't necessarily like writing essays really struggle with their cover letter, or they feel like it doesn't serve a purpose. But this is really where you get to elaborate on your most relevant experiences that truly align with the opportunity that you're applying for. And you're genuinely connecting the dots for the reader. They see your awesome resume and then they see the job description. That cover letter is the story between the two. So you're showing them how you fit into that opportunity. And then depending on what you're applying for, like I mentioned, they can, number one, vary based off of opportunity or the industry that you're like kind of working within. But if you're applying for something more academic based, maybe you're applying to grad school, that scholarship, sometimes internships as well, they may ask you for some specialized things like your transcripts to kind of show that you're either enrolled in classes or if they have certain GPA requirements or program requirements, they may ask for those. And then there's another piece to an application that is not uncommon, which is a personal statement. So sometimes this will act as a writing sample, if you will. But this is something that's really relevant when it comes to those graduate programs. If you're doing a scholarship, you may be doing like an essay that's a personal statement of sorts, where you're essentially responding to a prompt that is provided to you, and you're able to tell your story in that way. Similarly to the cover letter, this time you're kind of meeting what they're requesting of you. So like I mentioned, this is not a full list of what you may see in an application process. You may have also been asked to submit your schedule when you applied for your positions or your availability in that way. So there's other components, but the biggest piece that I want to share with you, the biggest takeaway, is to read the directions of the applications, right? You want to make sure that if they're asking you for a transcript, that you are providing that unofficial transcript, right? Because you don't want to be inadvertently disqualified for an opportunity before your materials even looked at because you didn't provide all of the different materials. And so, yeah, thinking about this as your story, for today, we're really going to focus on these two application materials. So your resume, this is going to be, you already know, this is what you've written. This is what you continue hopefully to beef up and expand on, but it's that quick overview of your skills, your experiences. It's really intended to be intentional, detailed enough, but quantifiable and qualifiable and quantifiable. So you're showing proof of your experiences, you're showing impact if you're able to show percentages of increases that apply to your different experiences. That's really powerful. You don't want it to feel like an essay. You don't want it to just be a block of text. So that's why we use those bullet points. We break up the experiences by sections, make it really easy on the eyes of the reader. When you're applying with your resume, that is the biggest maybe I guess, faux pas, you could say, is folks using exactly the same resume to apply for a bunch of different opportunities. And so Amanda and I really want to highlight for you all to tailor your resume, right? Bring your most relevant qualifications to the attention of the reader. Really consider the skills, the qualifications, or requirements that are spelled out in the job description or opportunity description and speak to those in language and terms that the employer would understand, meaning that if there's industry specific language, you're going to speak to that. If there's acronyms in your resume, you're going to spell them out. So we're going to talk a little bit more about resumes in a second, but to give a little brief overview of cover letters, just to be all on the same page, we're going to drop an emoji into the chat or a word, work appropriate, of what your feelings about cover letters are. If you really love them, if it's something that you struggle with, if they're just like the necessary evil that you have to do, go ahead and drop your thoughts in there while I kind of explain a little bit more about that. Ooh, I see some. Oh, yeah. I see a bunch of different options. There we go. Oh, Peter. Showcase projects. Yes, love that. Kind of intentionally approaching those. I am loving these. Totally. A little bit of everything, right? Well, hopefully at the end of this conversation, you'll see it as a way to really tell your story, and to be able to highlight your experiences in a way that's natural because you've been thinking about them consistently and it's not dusting off what you did a year ago or a month ago because you haven't even thought about it until you need to. So I'm here to tell you that the cover letter can be the thing that really sets you apart from the other stacks of your applications. And I know sometimes people are like, I just don't know how that's true, right? But it's all on how you express yourself and share your brand, if you will, of experiences. So talk about your demonstrated skills, use examples from your experiences, talk about your project work, like somebody mentioned in the chat, personalize your resume bullets, and then expand on that in your cover letter to really show your enthusiasm, interest, excitement, experience, and that you are helping them see you in the job, which is really valuable.
All right, so you are officially getting ready to apply for a job or an opportunity that you're interested in. And there's a couple of steps that are going to help really set you up for success. So, first, start by reviewing the position description. Read it carefully and pay attention to any repeated skills or phrases, minimum qualifications, and the actual job duties. Then think about your own experiences and goals. How do they line up with what that employer is looking for? And just as importantly, you need to ask yourself, what exactly does the company want me to do? And also, is that something I'd actually be interested in? So, just as important for you to be finding a job, you need to make sure that this is a position or a job that aligns with your goals, with your interests, with your experiences. You don't want to be stuck in a job that you don't like. So I know that we're really eager when we're getting ready to graduate or we're applying for these opportunities. Sometimes we just want to find something or we want to make sure that we have that giant job lined up after graduation. But it's going to be so much more beneficial to you in the long term if you are also finding something that is of interest and in alignment with your goals and your interests. So once you've decided that the position sounds like a good fit, the next step is really tailoring your materials. So going back to that job description and looking again for those keywords, those phrases or skills that they emphasize. It's also helpful to do a little bit of research on the organization too, and pick up on the language that they might use or that you're seeing repeated pretty regularly. For example, maybe they highlight teamwork throughout the job description, or that's a pillar of their culture and community that they promote within the organization. You could take something like a class project that you worked on and describe how you demonstrated teamwork. But instead of just calling it a group project, maybe really lean into how you highlight your reliability at your on-campus job, or your reliability in supporting that team and following through with the project deadlines, things like that, and the quality of work that you completed. Next part is worth repeating. Follow the application instructions. So, like Carly mentioned, read through the whole thing, maybe read through it twice. Every application can look a little different, which is why things like mass applying or using bots can actually hurt you. For example, I know in the applications that I post for my student employment positions, I like to throw a line in there that says, in the second paragraph of your cover letter, state your name and your favorite animal. So really pay close attention to what they're asking for. Make sure that you're including it and submitting those correct materials. So something like a cover letter, even if it isn't explicitly required, we always recommend including one. But if they do directly or explicitly ask for one and you skip it, your application would be considered incomplete and will most likely be rejected. So really pay close attention to those details. So beyond skills and experiences, employers are also looking for candidates who are career ready. Being career ready really means that you have experience with the 8 skills that you see on the screen, and these are the competencies that employers value most. What really matters is how you explain and demonstrate those skills, though. It's one thing to say, for example, I'm a good communicator, but what does that actually mean? How are you showing it? Maybe you've led a team meeting, presented in class, or trained a new coworker. Those are the kind of examples that back up your claim and make it real for an employer, and are important examples to highlight in both your resume and your cover letter. Think also about your academic work, student employment, or co-curricular activities, and try and match them up and connect them with these skills. Even take it a step further. Practice articulating those experiences so that the employer can see not just what you did, but how it proves that you have that skill. One way to get better at this is by learning as much as you can about the industry, the company, or organization that you're interested in pursuing an opportunity with. Pay attention to those common practices, again, that language that they use and the skills that they expect. You can also look at job postings to figure out what's important in that field, where you're strong, and where you may still want to grow. Even if you're not applying for a position right now, but you want to look at opportunities that you want to pursue in the future, look at those job descriptions and again, those skills that they're looking for to make sure that you can tailor and align your experiences during your time, during your academic career, with maybe those future opportunities. So you're setting yourself up for that long-term and future alignment of the goal that you have in mind.
All right. So we've been saying the word resume a lot in the presentation so far, as you could have imagined with the title of this presentation, right? But again, in the chat, if you want to unmute, why do you think that you need resumes when you're applying for opportunities? What do you think the value of a resume is? We need like the Jeopardy music. Doo-doo-doo. What do you think why do we need resumes? To sum up your lifetime professional journey, love that, beautifully said. So employers can see exactly what you've done. Absolutely digestible for them, everything kind of on a silver platter, show experience. Quick way for a prospective employer to see your history, specific contributions, skills, knowledge. Love that, Eric. gives a summary of our experiences and if we are a good fit for the position. Absolutely. You decided, like Amanda said, you read through the description. It's something that excited you, and now you're getting to talk about the ways that that fits and that it's not just something that looks fun. You actually are prepared to do that, and your resume would show that. Beneficial in displaying relevant experiences, skills for the job, to keep track of experience. Hello, Charlotte's our plant there for the living resume. Love that. Potential employers can have a basic idea of our experience. Yes, I love the word basic there because the resume is the first step in the ongoing conversation of your personal brand, like I mentioned before, right? It's a piece, cover letter, interview, all of those components kind of make up that experience. I love that. Highlighting your most important skills. Love this. Yeah. Provide a quick overview of skills and experiences, showcase qualifications. I love that. Circling it back to not just your experiences, but the qualifications of the opportunity, opening doors to new opportunities. Love that. All right. So it sounds like we are pretty confident that resumes serve a purpose, right, in the bigger world here. And I also am not going to be silly and assume that you all don't have a resume already. And so instead of breaking down the like nitty-gritty components of what each part of a resume are, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview, and then we're going to dive into some of the like most important components to consider. So, like we've kind of alluded to, your resume is your first introduction and impression to the hiring committee. And so that can be a big deal, right? We want you to be remembered, and you want to be remembered for all the right reasons when it comes to your resume. So, regardless of the document that fits your personal and professional needs, all of the resumes should have certain things and should be done in a certain way. So, no matter kind of what experiences you have, there are some pieces that are really important for hopefully some obvious reasons, right? And so if we're thinking about formatting, we want it to be easy to read. We don't want to have any kind of obscure or complex fonts that make it really difficult to decipher what you have written, kind of avoiding the like scripty kind of fonts, right? So you're wanting things that are easy to read, direct language. You want to maintain that professional language and really ensure that there is no grammar or spelling errors in your document, because those tend to, especially in the format of the resume, like those tend to be glaring when you're looking at it as a first-time reviewer, but you've looked at your resume a million times. So it can be really hard for you to see what's actually on the paper versus what you know in your brain. It's like when you're proofreading an essay and you misspell a word, but you know in your head what that word is. And so having somebody else review your resume can be really impactful in that way. And even asking them to look only for grammar or only for consistency in spacing, or if you're using periods, like making sure that you use periods consistently. Some new fresh eyes can be really helpful with that. You also want to ensure, this is something that you may already know, but just to emphasize, you want to make sure that your resume is in reverse chronological order, meaning that your most recent information is listed at the top and that you include the most relevant experiences that connect to the opportunity that you're applying to. So again, that was something we've talked about a lot, but it's important enough to repeat. So this may mean, though, as you are thinking about reverse chronological order, most relevant experiences, you may not have every experience that you've had on the resume that you're applying to the job with. And so not being afraid to remove things, rearrange things, reimagine your sections, which we're going to talk about sections in a second, to make it make the most sense for that opportunity. So don't be afraid of taking things out if they aren't the most relevant opportunity. Totally something that you can talk about in an interview later on if it makes sense then. So just really make sure you're reading that job description and listing the qualifications accordingly. When we're thinking about resumes, I'm taking a pause because I wanted to say, I know this isn't like a resume workshop, right? Like career services does do a like, let's take out your resume and we're going to go like line by line. But these are the formatting pieces that we want to set you up for success. And so the kind of nitty gritty, we're not going to go really deep into, but the most important pieces, like I said on the last slide, that could impact your ability to be considered for an opportunity, we really want to highlight those. So making sure that we're avoiding templates when we can. And when I say templates, I'm meaning like if you go to Google and you find a resume template on Google or Microsoft, we want to think that those organizations know what they're talking about. But the truth is that they may inadvertently be like not intentionally setting you up for failure kind of, because if you're using templates that have columns, some of those different applicant tracking systems that companies are using to streamline their hiring processes can't read some of those templates correctly. So my example of columns, those ATSs tend to read left to right. And so visually columns are really appealing and can help you include more information, but it's going to be read wonky because it's going to read it across those columns. So kind of avoiding those sort of templates when you can. We want to have that black and white. We want the single space so that you're really taking advantage of the real estate that you have on that page. So don't be afraid to go to 0.5 margins, not any smaller than that because you don't want anything to like cut off. You want to have that font, like I said, that's easy to read. You want one that's like, standard Arial Times New Roman kind of style, avoiding some of those more dainty or extreme fonts that may be fun for like posters, but may not be easy to read on a resume. Your name should, I have some question. Hold on. Is it still necessary to keep your resume? Sydney, we are going to talk about that if it's necessary to keep your resume to one page. So if at the end I don't bring that up or Amanda doesn't mention it, do a little like extra poke, but we are definitely going to talk about that when we talk about the living resume. Perfect. So this is going to be probably obvious, but again, we want to set you up for success, be on the same page. The things that you want to always include is going to be, of course, your contact information, right? So you want them to know how to get a hold of you. And so including your name on that last slide, you saw that that's going to be the biggest thing on the page is your name. So that 14:16 font where everything else may be as small as 10 at the smallest. So include your email address, your phone number. You don't need to include your address. LinkedIn, if you have it, is appropriate though. And then the other thing that you want to be sure to include is going to be your education. And so I would say 9 times out of 10, the first minimum qualification for an opportunity at large is going to be related to your education, either being actively a student as a requirement. Maybe it's that you're in a certain major or discipline, maybe that you have completed a certain degree. Those are going to be really critical as like bare minimum qualifications. So you want to make sure that that's nice and easy to see and is on every iteration of your material. And then the last one, of course, super obvious, is your experiences. So the majority of the page should be the experiences that you have, and the ways that you format that can be varied, which I'm going to share in the next slide here. So we said contact information, education, experiences. The way that you define experiences could look a lot different, right? It doesn't have to be paid experience. Experiences can be volunteer work. They can include the relevant courses like that's listed on this page. It is a non-exhaustive list that shows all the different ways that you can think beyond the basics of what a resume looks like. In addition to that, it's things that you can tailor based on the opportunity. So maybe you're applying for an internship and you decide to include community involvement because in Amanda's example earlier, they're really interested in community engagement as like a pillar of their values at that company. But the other job that you apply for, you don't. Instead, you are more interested in highlighting your course projects. Don't be afraid to mix and match as long as it makes sense and as long as you have enough information in the sections to include that. So I'll go a little bit deeper in some of these sections. So being able to highlight, maybe 4 to 6 of your relevant upper division courses is a really great way to connect to an industry if your jobs and your different alternative experiences, experiential opportunities, maybe aren't as direct a connection, right? We know about transferability, but the coursework can be a great way to highlight that. Ooh, I have a resource for that too, Charlotte. Absolutely. So highlighting your coursework and projects, you want to be sure that if you do decide to showcase courses, that you're using the title of the course and not the abbreviation. We talk in abbreviations in higher ed all the time. An employer likely isn't going to know what like ASU 101 means, right? And so being able to elaborate what that means by using the full title is going to be really important. And I have some examples on our career services website that shows exactly how you can highlight your coursework as well as projects, because projects can be a standalone section that really lets you give more details about what you did in that project. Being civically engaged is valuable to employers, but it's also a value of us at ASU, right? So in our charter, we talk about that Sun Devils assume that fundamental responsibility for the economic, social, cultural, and overall health of the communities we serve. So being able to elaborate how you've done that in your resume as a Sun Devil can be really powerful. And then just to touch on a couple more of these so that you kind of know what we mean when we're talking about these. Being a part of professional and student organizations is huge in skill building, just like we know being a student employee is huge in skill building. And so being able to highlight that, especially if you've held leadership positions, if you've been really active and engaged, that's all going to have great value in your resume, as well as being able to elaborate that in your cover letter and even more in your interviews. And then we've talked about kind of durable or transferable skills, right? Amanda showed you that screen of what the top 8 skills that some people may call soft skills, but we like to call those durable and transferable skills that may not fit into an industry specific. You do want to be able to highlight your technical skills. And so being able to have a section that specifically talks about these are going to be the abilities that you acquire through practice and learning to perform specific tasks. So these are learned, they're defined, they're evaluated and probably measured in some way. This could include like being able to speak another language. It could include being able to do specific software programs or specific coding languages. So these are going to be a lot more direct in that way and absolutely warrant their own section. And the last piece about resumes that we're going to hit on is just something called the hot zone. I don't know if anybody's ever thought about their resume in this way, but the average time that a recruiter, if it's a human being like reading your material, is going to look for that first impression is 20 seconds at most. And so you want to catch their attention. You want there to be something really valuable in that. And so being able to put that most relevant, most important, recent, if it applies, experiences at the top in that kind of first third of your resume is going to really be able to help you stand out and connect to the opportunity in a really quick way so that you go from that big stack into that smaller stack.
All right, thank you, Carly. So we now know the basics of a resume. I'm certainly going to go back and update my resume after this presentation. But now we want to think a little bit outside of the box with your resume. We don't want to accidentally disqualify ourselves, but we want to also focus on what you're doing in between those applications. And one of the best things that you can do is keep track of your experiences in real time. That means writing down your skills, your projects, accomplishments, and all of those other key pieces Carly mentioned all in one place. This way, when it comes time to update your resume or you're applying for something new, you're not trying to remember everything you've ever done. You've already got a running list that you can pull from, and it makes the process a lot less stressful. It's going to help you in being more efficient and tailoring your resume to those specific experiences or opportunities that you want to pursue. So, what is a living resume? It is basically a big, detailed list of everything you've accomplished, and it should evolve just as you evolve. The key is really to add information and experiences as they happen. When it's fresh in your mind, you have the opportunity to reflect on it in real time. And that's going to help in a couple of different ways. First, when you're again tailoring your next application, you already have those details written down. But also, secondly, when you go to an interview, you have spent the time reflecting, you have spent the time being intentional with writing down those experiences or tailoring that resume. So you've already thought through what you did, what that skill looks like and that it took, and what you've learned from it that you can then hopefully speak to in an interview. A great resource to use as like your living resume, maybe you just create a Google Doc and you just keep a running list. You can add tabs for those different types of experiences. One is for education, one is for work experience, one is for academic experiences, and you can just add to that throughout the semester, throughout the academic year. We want you to start thinking of your resume less like a checklist of jobs and tasks and more like a journal of your impact, your professional story that we've kind of been talking about throughout today. That mindset shift is going to make a huge difference in how you present yourself to employers. So what does it look like? What does this living resume look like? And going back to Sydney's question, this is where you kind of have that opportunity for it to be more than one page. So forget about that page limit when it comes to your living resume. For most undergrads with little full-time work experience, you will want to submit a one-page resume when applying. But something like your living resume is really just for your records. So it can and it should be as long as it needs to be. It's going to be your central place to track everything you've ever done. That also means that you don't have to stick to just 2 to 5 bullet points per experience. You have an opportunity to go detail. The more detail that you capture, the more options you'll have later when you are sitting down to tailor your resume to a specific opportunity. You can pull the bullet points from that list and best connect the opportunity that you're applying for. So make sure to include any sections that make sense as long as you've got at least a couple of bullet points to go under them. For example, maybe a company really values community service. If you already documented your involvement on your living resume, you can just pull that section straight into your tailored version of your resume without trying to remember, again, every project you've ever done or every experience you've ever had years later. So you can also and should also use resources. So maybe in that document that you are using for your living resume, you're linking to a syllabi from a past class that you took. Or you create a folder where you just house all of your projects from your coursework. Check your current job descriptions. Do you have those skills and responsibilities captured on your living resume? Maybe after today's workshop, you go and ask your supervisor, hey, can I see my job description for the current job that I'm doing? I need to make sure that I have actually listed all the things that I am doing in my living resume. And then there are tools that we can also share with you to make it a little bit easier. So we have something called the WordPlus Accomplishment Tracker, and I will throw the link to that in the chat. Give me 1 second. This is a great tool for helping you reflect on what you've done. It serves as somewhat of a template or giving you a little bit of structure to reflect on your experiences, connecting it to those transferable skills that we highlighted a couple of slides ago, and writing it out in more of a structured accomplishment statement type of language. So, how did your specific experience align with communication skills? So, again, we're not saying I'm just a good communicator. We're actually highlighting a specific example that aligns with that particular skill. That template also gives you space to detail out what you maybe want to do to continue to improve and to learn. So maybe it's something that you keep with you throughout the semester. And then at the end of the semester, you're going in and revisiting your resume, you're revisiting your living resume, and adding in more of those accomplishments specifically aligned with those transferable skills that we highlighted. So ultimately, the big takeaway with this and with that living resume is build a detailed living resume now, and it's going to it's going to save you a lot of time and stress later on down the road. Use the same format as you would with a standard resume. So keeping that header, that contact information, your education, and then you can layer in those extra bullets and sections. So then again, when it is time to apply, you're just making a copy of that living resume and then trimming it down or customizing it to fit that specific role that you're applying for. The reality is that you should have more than one version of your resume. And when you're applying for jobs, again, we don't want to be mass applying. That's when our resume and our cover letters are getting overlooked, when we aren't being specific and tailoring our resume to, again, the job description and key responsibilities of the role that we're applying for. So having something like the living resume is going to make applying for opportunities more efficient, more intentional, and a lot less overwhelming. So, a couple of things to capture and when to capture them on your living resume. Um, when we're thinking beyond the typical one-page resume that we maybe are barely tweaking for each application, we can instead focus on building that resume that evolves with you, and we're setting ourselves up to capture the important details as they happen. So that could mean adding new responsibilities or tasks you've taken on in a job or a leadership role. It could also mean recording your wins. So you should absolutely celebrate the great work or recognition that you're receiving from your peers or your supervisor or your professors. Um, Take that feedback and find a way to document it in your living resume so that you can then find a way to incorporate it into your actual resume or talk about those experiences in your cover letter. Sometimes those moments highlight the strengths that you didn't even realize you have also. If you've been building new skills, whether they're technical or those transferable skills, add those too. Don't forget about projects or class assignments. Even though they can feel time consuming or stressful, they actually demonstrate a wide range of abilities that employers care about and that they're looking for, and they belong on your living resume. This way, again, your living resume is growing with you, and it's not having to, when it comes time to apply, you're not recalling everything from memory. You've already got it captured.
Awesome. So, as we promised in the beginning, we are going to kind of end up by talking about now that you've considered all of your different experiences by elaborating on your original resume, really making that living document, or CV, as that was a great question that was in the chat. How do you bring that all together and include things in your cover letter? How do you tell your story throughout your entire application process? So I'm going to ask a question before we touch on this slide. We already asked about like, what do we think the value of a resume is? I'm going to ask the same question, and we've given a couple teasers already in the presentation, but why do you all think that cover letters matter? Or in your own experience, how have you maybe firsthand had an opportunity that your cover letter really mattered? So feel free to drop those um, answers in the chat on why you think cover letters matter and contribute to your overall application process. I'll wait a second. I was going to keep talking, but I'll wait a minute. I'll get some answers. Why do we think cover letters matter? Ooh, I see some coming in. I love how engaged you all are. Demonstrate motivation and interest. Love. They elaborate on your mentioned skills in your resume. Exactly. It's that opportunity to say more, right? You don't just have to fit it into an accomplishment statement bullet. Chance to showcase personality, unique voice, highlight specific accomplishments and goals and how they align with the position. Love. Oh, they let the employer meet you. It is like a little pre-meeting. I love that. They're going to see that before they see you, right? So that's a beautiful way to think about it. I can include how my personal interests or experiences connect to the company. That's right, because you're doing your research and you're finding out what those companies value and if you align with those values, right? Introduces you before they meet you and you can say more, right? So when you have those follow-up conversations or in the interviews, you can refer back to what you talked about in both your resume and got to elaborate on in your cover letter. Love that. Great way to go more in depth, understanding of job deliverables. Absolutely. Totally. So just like with the resumes, we know the value, even if they're maybe overwhelming or a little bit tedious sometimes, or like another thing we have to do, right? We know the value of them. And it really is to connect your experiences to the role and show that voice, which you all beautifully touched on. And this slide here quickly just shows you, again, not doing like a full in-depth cover letter presentation, but this shows you kind of what to include when you're thinking about your cover letter. You want it to be typically a page long. So even if you're submitting like a CV that may be longer because you have all the different sections to include, as opposed to a resume, the cover letter, you still kind of want it to be short, direct, and sweet, right? Somebody's actually reading that. So you don't want it to be like your whole memoir necessarily. You want it to be that same format as your resume. So use the same header, use the same font. This is a way for them to kind of have that brand recognition, if you will, between your different materials. You want to state the job or program you're applying to. And I kind of chuckle at that because as a hiring manager, the worst feeling in the world is when you have this stack of wonderful applicants and you're diving into reading about the folks that are really excited for your teaching assistant position. But then the first line is how excited that applicant is to apply for the Sun Devil Fitness Center lead position. Like they did not apply for the right job or they used the same cover letter. And that is totally disheartening, right? Because you're like, oh, like just paying attention to those little details. And I'm sure the person that applied with that is like gutted, right? So making sure you double check that you name the opportunity. Don't be super vague or general. Be as detailed as you can so that the reader knows that you put the time into tailoring that application material. In that opening paragraph, you want to greet the hiring manager. You want to be able to kind of have that hook, why you're interested, engage with them. Consider how you want to make sure that they keep reading, right? Be brief enough while you're also highlighting your qualifications and that you're literally the top notch pick for this job. And you're going to tell them how in the rest of the letter, right? In that second paragraph, you're really going to focus on the employer as much as possible. And so, biggest takeaway for that is explain what makes you that good fit for the position. You talked about that that's the value of the cover letter in our awesome chat here. And so, this is where you really get to put kind of the money where your mouth is. Is that the term? You get to explain and be able to elaborate on those opportunities. Speak to why you're strong for the position by giving examples. If you can't highlight in your cover letter, like when you're sitting down to write this, if you can't highlight why you'd be a strong candidate for that opportunity, then you're going to have trouble speaking to that in the interview. And it may be that that's like an aha moment of you, like, maybe this isn't what I really wanted after all. So it could be like a good gut check too, but the cover letter is a great way to kind of get prepared for talking about yourself in the interview. You want to highlight any of those assets that make you the top candidate from your previous experiences, as well as pulling together what you've researched that company or organization is doing now that aligns with you. So pull up their mission statement, pull up their values, talk to those in a genuine way. And then you want to be able to end with just a brief summary of those qualifications, the last final pieces there. And then do not be afraid to end with a call to action, right? Speak it into existence that you would love an interview. Ask for that interview, right? And be able to avoid using words like hope to, and instead, I would suggest using words like look forward to, right? Like it's happening. So being able to speak in that active tense can be really powerful and strong in your cover letter.
All right, so let's put everything together. So we've gone over the resume basics, we've talked about your living resume and your cover letter. Let's actually connect everything back and we'll do a little bit of practice too. So we talked earlier about those career readiness skills and what employers are looking for, and everything really connects back to those. And something like your living resume and your cover letter is how you can articulate those skills through all of the experiences you've had. So on the left side of the screen, you see a student job and their essential duties. Let's take a look at this job is a desk assistant. This is an actual student job here at ASU. What skills do you think are being developed here? And throw those in the chat.
There's always that awkward pause when everyone's processing, and I'm always like, I want to fill it.
I sometimes think there's a lag too with the chat because they all always come in at once.
At once, yes,
Yep,
absolutely.
communication and organization. What specific duty do you see on this list that aligns with communication and organization? Yeah, Brianna, that's great. Greeting people, corresponding with vendors, absolutely. Ultimately, there is a lot that's happening in this one role, and there's a lot that's happening in each of your roles as well. And so this reflection piece and capturing it in your living resume is going to help you in remembering those little details later on. It's already there. You've already spent the time connecting it with future opportunities. Every experience you have adds to both your ASU journey as well as your long-term future goals and career journey. And every one of them is going to build toward your career story and your future. So here's our little formula for success. Your living and adapted resume is the foundation. It's where you've captured all of your experience, your skills, and accomplishments in real time. This is what lets you tailor a resume for each opportunity without trying to remember everything you've done. Plus, you're then adding in storytelling with your cover letter. That's how you're bringing those experiences to life. It's where you're connecting the dots for employers, if you will, showing not only what you did, but why it matters and how it relates to the role that you're applying for. So then combining those two is where we get powerful and purposeful applications. You're not just sending in a list of jobs or tasks. You're showing the employer your story, your skills, and your impact. That's what's going to help make your application stand out and set you up for success. So just a couple of final tips. Take advantage of the time between applications or right now we are still in September. Maybe this is the start of your student employment experience, or you are doing an internship or research, or are part of a new club or organization right now, and you're not really thinking about the next opportunity, but really use this time to put those materials together. It's going to help make a difference along your career journey if you're being intentional now. So, a couple of tips. Maybe you set a monthly reminder or time to do a little resume touch up. Maybe this is adding new class projects or new tasks and responsibilities you've gained over that month. Even if you haven't changed jobs, you still might want to sit down and highlight new or strengthened skills. Maybe you ask your supervisor, hey, I just finished this project or task. Would it be okay if I just spent 30 minutes documenting this experience on my living resume so I can remember it for later on? Another really good tip or something to remember as you're updating your living resume is to celebrate those wins, or having that like smile folder or a brag folder highlighting your accomplishment. These can be things that you jot down that you're proud of yourself for doing, or some things that others have shared with you that they're proud of you for doing. Your supervisor gives you a compliment or good feedback or something, or one of your peers thanks you for supporting them through a project or a task. And then finally, practice writing short stories about your work. This is going to help you continue to gain that confidence for cover letters and in interviews. Career Services has a few different resources that are rooted in the STAR method, which some of you might be familiar with, some of you might just be hearing about. We'll certainly share those. But those are resources you can use to provide direct examples that share the situation, the task, the action, and result. And you can use that method for your resume, your cover letter, and in interviews. And practicing writing out those experiences, maybe in alignment with the STAR method, is going to help you to prepare for those interviews. This practice can kind of be a little uncomfortable at first, but the more you do it, the better you get and the easier it feels.
Awesome. So in our last couple minutes, I just dropped a bunch of links so that you can link right to some of the resources we're going to talk about. But the first one is actually a brand new platform that Career Services launched this year. So if any of you have used Big Interview, you may have even interviewed for your student position using Big Interview or VMOC. Sun Devil Career Prep is now kind of the one-stop shop for all of that. So as you're working on your resume and as you're kind of trying to evolve your cover letters, this platform can do all of those things with you. It can also help you do mock interviews where you even submit your resume and a specific job description, and it gives you questions that are directly related to both. So it's true, really quality practice. You can even do salary negotiation. So when the time comes for that, you can explore how to do that, which can be challenging for people, especially if you've never done it or never really considered what can I negotiate? Like it's more than just your salary. So take a look at Sun Devil Career Prep and explore a little bit. You may even have some classes that have assignments connected to it. And then the last slide is just highlighting, which the chat has as well. We also have things in real time that you can use. So as you take that monthly moment to reflect on your experiences, the way that that can become a little bit more natural, like Amanda said, is to kind of use worksheets. And we have a bunch of those through Career Services. There's the accomplishment tracker that Amanda mentioned that I linked the Student Employee Hub that you can find that. Any way that you all can practice that so that when you tell your story, you're able to do it with confidence. You sit down for that application and you make a copy of that living resume, you tweak it, you adjust it, you take out some of the extra bullets that you included, and you are able to send those off with ease, comfort, confidence, and you know how to talk about your experiences and intentionally fill gaps along the way while you're here at ASU, because you have so many different opportunities that you can take advantage of as you are more conscious and aware of areas you want to grow. So thank you so much for chatting with us, and hopefully learning some good nuggets.
If anyone has any questions, Carly and I can hang out for a few minutes or so. So feel free to throw those into the chat or come off of mute. But if not, thank you all so much for joining us. And once you update your resume, make sure to go to Career Services and they'll help you with a review. Like I said, I'm certainly going to go through and update my resume after this. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.